Hello, my name is Vishwa Donaval, and today we will be discussing the minorities in modern day society. Immigrants see this country as not just any ordinary country, they see this place as a new shot at life, an escape from oppression, a second chance, if you will. Now, before we answer the question of what steps can the United States government take to make minorities feel as if they are part of the American community, we must gain a basic understanding as to how America came to be and how America treated its minority population. We'll be discussing this question through three key lenses. First, we'll take a look back in history, seeing how this country came to be and how it treated its minorities. Second, we will be taking a look as to how minorities make up modern day society and the effect it has had on them socially. And finally, we'll be looking at minorities in the workplace, seeing how their salaries differ from race to race and seeing how it contributes to the overall United States economy. Now, looking back at history, there has been many forms of oppression, but the one glaring one would probably be slavery, because it is the oldest relic. Dating all the way back to 1492, Christopher Columbus enslaved countless Native Americans and forced them to do the will of the Spanish. In fact, according to a Britannica article, Native Americans embraced Christopher Columbus with open arms, believing him to be a welcoming leader. Rather, he was a ruthless dictator, one that indulged and exposed many Native Americans to harsh conditions. This practice of slavery continued all the way up to 1865, at the end of the Civil War, when slavery was finally abolished. But it did not end there. In fact, racism, some would argue, would skyrocket in the form of segregation. A key advocate for segregation and keeping races apart was the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, a white supremacist group that believed that race mixing was wrong and that the white people were the master race of society. In fact, according to a documentary in which a reporter went to document the Ku Klux Klan, a group that still exists today, and he essentially went on a 14-day hike with the Ku Klux Klan, seeing how they function and invading their inner sanctums and inner meetings. Now, white Ku Klux Klan encouraged all white people to join the Klan and the Brotherhood, and those that refused were publicly shamed in the form of they were publicly shamed by having a white cross burned in front of their house or their general area. Here we can clearly see in this graph that white people and black people were clearly discriminated against, as many of them were forced to use different facilities. However, black people were exposed to far less quality utility than white people. Moving on to taking a look at how modern day society has had a social effect on the minorities. First of all, as the aforementioned YouTube documentary documenting the Ku Klux Klan's movements today, the Ku Klux Klan still exists and has been at an all-time high, especially at the height of the Maryland police shootings. Many of the white people were felt as if they were oppressed and turned to the Ku Klux Klan as a way to escape this oppression. And there's been a new rise, one oppression that was viewed as a solution to 20th century racism. This is called affirmative action. Affirmative action basically allowed minorities to enter universities, and essentially many universities had to have a certain number of minority kids to be deemed not biased. This was highly controversial in today's society. In fact, according to a Harvard Crimson magazine, a widely popular publication in the Harvard University campus, many Asian Americans were quoted by saying that they felt that they had a much harder route through Harvard. However, many people backlash against this by saying that this is just an excuse by many Asian parents an excuse for many Asian parents for blaming public school systems because their kid didn't get into a prestigious university. This is a chart on The Economist basically saying how the Ku Klux Klan is still active in many countries in the South and states even as far up as Montana. And this is just a cartoon stating on how affirmative action has been a very detrimental thing to society. As the white kid eventually blames the person in the black shirt, saying on how this was the reason, as how he was the reason as to why they did not get in to the university of their choice. Finally, we'll be taking a look at we'll be addressing this question through an economic lens and viewing minorities in the workforce. Now, evidently, as through this job, racism and race inequality exists even in today's society in the workforce. As we can see in this graph, over 66% of American retail workforces is made up of white people. This is highly problematic as to how, despite the exponential strides that we made, racism is still on the rise. As evident as we can see that the smallest portion that makes up the American retail workforce is Asian Americans. This is a problem that needs to be fixed. How, one may ask? And this is just a graph that further explains that the same effects happened on a global level. Now, how can we solve this? Well, there's no statistic or empirical way to solve this. This can only be solved by human morals, as many humans need to see the fact that they need to accept people regardless of color and judge them based off of the color of their, not by the color of their skin, but their character. In fact, according to the letter to Birmingham, a letter that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. highlighted the oppression that black people had to face and the urge that he urged many Americans to take, to not judge people based off the color of their skin, but rather their character. Even Bob Marley, a wildly popular musical artist, highlighted the oppression that many people had to face on a daily basis. Furthermore, we need to have political unification by not discriminating people or stereotyping them. They need to essentially be accepted among all people in society. Once again, this is highlighted by the fact that people need to be judged off of their moral compass and character rather than the color of their skin. Thank you.